Hello, I'm Lauren Green, and you're in the strategy room. Marco Rubio is still battling criticism over his missed votes in the Senate, and now Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid is calling on the Florida senator to resign. Rubio contends that Reid called for no such thing in 2008 when then-Senator Barack Obama was missing votes during his run for the White House. So is there a double standard? Here with their take, Jeanne Zaino, professor of political science and international studies at Iona College, and Jessica Proud, partner at the November team. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So, Jessica, let me start with you. What do you make of this
It's completely hypocritical. He was silent when Obama missed 60 to 70%. John Kerry did the same thing. And not to mention, you have the president, between all the time he spends on the golf course and vacationing and out fundraising. I mean, this is really a silly conversation. I think it's a direct reaction to how strong Marco Rubio's debate performance was the other night, but I don't think the average voter cares about this all that much. I mean, if I'm sitting home watching TV and frustrated with Washington, I'm thinking the least amount of time that they spend there is probably a good thing.
I mean, what do you think, G? I mean, do you think they're being fair with Marco Rubio?
You know, I think the Sun Sentinel really brought this up, and Jeb Bush jumped on it, because this is, you go back to the meeting he had with his family where Donald Trump famously said he went to spend time with his mom and dad. And what were they trying to do? They were trying to say that Marco Rubio is Barack Obama. They are both first-term senators. They were not doing their job in the Senate while they were running for president. So Jeb Bush has been trying to make this case because he feels like Marco Rubio is his #1 competitor at this point. So I think, you know, you combine that with the Sun Sentinel, and we're going to hear a lot more of this. But while I don't think the missing of the votes is as much of an issue, I do think Republicans have an issue with the fact that Marco Rubio is a first-term senator, a junior senator, and they hit Barack Obama very hard on that issue, and I happen to think rightly so. Does he have the time and the experience in Washington, in the Senate, to make things work? And I'm assuming Jessica will come back and say we don't want them from Washington, D.C., which is a fair point. But it is something that the GOP has to contend with after they hit Barack Obama that hard last time around.
And Jessica, this is kind of, I don't want to say an easy criticism, but it's something you can criticize a lot of presidential candidates about. But, I mean, is there this understood notion that you have to balance your life as a senator or as a congressperson, or a governor, and going out to campaign for president?
Right. Well, that's why I think this attack isn't going to gain all that much steam, because, look, if I'm a political outsider in the race, I'm a Ben Carson or a Carly Fiorina, the attack coming from them makes a lot more sense, because you can go after the professional political class. They're always running for the next office instead of focusing on reforming the problems. They're thinking about re-election or running for another office. But to come from a former governor, but to Jeannie's point, I do think it's interesting how, you know, this year I really thought the governors in the race would be the ones that would be standing out and ahead at this point, because they have a real record of achievement. They have that executive experience, and it does provide such a stark contrast to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. But it has been the outsiders and the senators that have been doing well, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
I still think that voters are kind of still dating the candidates at this point. They haven't gotten
I love that. Yeah, the polls show that. Yeah, they're
we're just dating.
Yeah.
Serious. You know,
no rings yet.
But Jeanne, you know. Chris Christie was called out, too, by the New York Times, and they told him, you know, pack up and go home. You know, your state needs you. What do you think of that?
Which Chris Christie said was a badge of honor from the New York Times. And, you know, I think Chris Christie is a slightly different case. New Jersey is in an awful lot of trouble economically and otherwise. And it's not just the New York Times. He has been called out by people in his own state who have even tried to mount a campaign to say if a governor is going to run, they should amend the Constitution, that they have to resign. Now, I don't think that they should make that statement. So this is not just the New York Times, but you're absolutely right. A lot of candidates are being hit on this. Rand Paul is being hit on this. And the problem for a Rand Paul and a Marco Rubio, quite frankly, is if they don't get the nomination, if they don't win the presidency, are they going to have the time to go back home and really deal with what's going on in their states? And, you know, we've seen people who have had trouble with that while they're focused on other things. I mean, you look back at what happened to Eric Cantor, a very different situation. But when you're trying to do too many things at once, your constituents can feel like you have dropped the ball. And that's a problem if you want to get reelected. I don't think Chris Christie is going to be in that situation. But I do think Rand Paul and Marco Rubio may be. Now, given that said, they may have enough time to focus on their constituency and get things back on track.
And Jessica, does it hurt your homeland if you're going out on the campaign trail for presidency? I mean, like Chris Christie. I mean, is he okay at home, or should
it depends? Look, I think if Chris Christie had to run for re-election tomorrow, he would probably lose. I mean, the New York Times editorial was sort of a double-edged sword because, on the one hand, for Republicans looking at the New York Times weighing in on the Republican primary is like, it's insane. So it is a badge of honor for him, but they also did a very effective job laying out the problems in New Jersey that maybe the New York Times saying it isn't going to have much impact, but when he has to account for that in the campaign, voters are going to be asking questions.
All right, I want to thank you very much, Jeanne Zaino and Jessica Brown. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can check out foxnews.com for more on the 2016 presidential race. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for joining us.